Welcome along to another edition of The Marketplace. Today, it's an episode with a twist. It's run by you, the fans. We've given you a chance on social media to ask questions of our panel for today, what's happened during the free agency period so far, and what might still be coming your way. Joining me, as always, is the best newsbreaker in Australian basketball, Olgun Uluc from ESPN.com.au.
Thanks, Jack.
And also joining us, MVP of this competition and MVP of Marketplace. He was with us for our very first edition of Marketplace at Kudos Bank Arena. Derek Rucker, great to see you.
Very flattering, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm really looking forward to see what type of topics are presented to us by the fans.
Well, as I said, today is a bit of a different twist on things. We've thrown this open on Instagram for the last 24 hours or so and asked you, the fans, for your questions for either Olgun or Derek of what we've seen and what you'd like to see during this free agency period. Let's not waste any time. Let's start with probably the most popular question from all of our fans on Instagram. Olgun, what is going on with Milton Doyle?
Yeah, Jack, Milton Doyle's season with Tofaş in Turkey just finished. And so this is the time when I was told that the talks between him and the Jack Jumpers were going to start heating up properly. There was always an expectation that talks were in a really good place, and that's where they have been. The season's over in Turkey, and so now those talks can heat up a little bit. I'm told those talks are in the advanced stages, so it wouldn't surprise me if there's some sort of announcement or an agreement pretty imminently.
Derek, I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel here when I say that he's the most important piece for the Jack Jumpers. Is that fair?
Well, he definitely proved that, especially at times last year when they were without their point guard. And I thought he did a really good job of showing his versatility to be able to get the Jack Jumpers into offense. He was solid defensively. And look, he's a key piece. And I would think that they would like to maintain some type of continuity. We're not sure what's going to happen with Josh Magette. Perhaps Olgun has an update there. But Doyle is the guy that's really going to drive them. He's one of the top 3 to 5 players in the competition, I think, returning. So, wow, that's a big piece. And if the Jack Jumpers can't get him, Olgun, surely somebody else would be all over him.
Yeah, there was interest from everyone in Milton Doyle, at the very least reaching out to his agent and asking what the situation was. But the expectation going into free agency was that a deal was going to get struck between Doyle and the Jack Jumpers. That remains the expectation. The question that I then ask is, how much is it for? The Jack Jumpers were really keen on Will McDowell-White. That didn't happen. They do want a higher level replacement for Josh Magette, and that costs money. And so, depending on what Milton Doyle got, it can sort of hamstrung a team as far as the point guard that they can get. That is the big priority when it goes into summer league and after this potential Doyle deal gets done. But the money part of it is interesting to me. How much money they have to spend on that starting point guard is interesting.
Well, hopefully that's good news for Jack Jumpers fans in the not-too-distant future. One for you, Derek. We know how passionate the Red Army are. Can the Wildcats make the finals with their current roster?
Without a doubt. 100%. I think they have done one of the best jobs along with Melbourne United in their offseason recruiting. Their free agent signings have been blockbuster. Obviously, getting Keanu Pender, who becomes more of a unique commodity this season with the absence of Xavier Cooks, he is really going to be a problem for teams to handle. So, re-signing the Websters. Now, Olgun, you know my belief about the Websters. I don't feel like they're good together, but perhaps they've matured. I trust John Riley's instincts and his judgment in this one. Now you've got a backcourt of the 2 Webster boys and Bryce Cotton. That potentially could be the best triumvirate in the league in terms of a backcourt. I like the look of the French kid, Alex Sarr. I think, if he can give them some minutes, he's, again, another unique attribute. They're going to be really athletic up front. They still got a couple of signings left, right, Olgun? And I think, they're going for it, and you love to see this.
Derek, so here's the thing. The Wildcats have no choice but to be good this season, because what I'm looking at is next offseason, where the Wildcats have 9 of 11 players already signed. They have their 8 local players already signed. And so this has to be right. They have to get it done this season. Otherwise, they really don't have much flexibility going into next offseason. We look at Jesse Wagstaff just signed. I imagine Carl Zunic's contract is off the books, and then you have Dante Rosso-Nance, a really quality Kiwi point guard. He joins the roster. Michael Harris joins the roster. But there's no flexibility there, and they don't want to get in the same situation that they went through this offseason in having a Mitch Norton, a Todd Blanchfield, these guys who you're trying to get rid of, and they have to pay a part of that buyout fee. That part of that buyout fee also hits the cap, and so you don't want to be hamstrung by that stuff anymore. And so they have retooled in a really interesting way. They've gone younger. It'll probably be a more up and down style of play that John really wants to play, and I think the roster sort of suits that. The only issue that I see, if it doesn't work, outside of the two team options on the two Webster brothers, there's no flexibility going into next season. And so this season, there's a ton of pressure on this team to perform because they're the same thing next season too.
Well, it looks like, Olgun, that they've kind of based it around the fact with John Riley's extension, it's a 2-year window, right? It's
That's
2 years.
That's what it looks like.
Get us a title or bust, and everybody's out of here.
That's what it looks like. And obviously, they still have 2 more import spots to fill. The Keanu Pinder signing was a home run, and so that is what it is. Having Bryce Cotton still on the roster, Bryce Cotton is Bryce Cotton, right? We know what he brings, and so what they do with those next 2 import spots is interesting to me. I'm told that they want a 3 and a 4. If they can fill one of those spots with a marquee player instead, they'll go and do that. But that's what they're going for. It'll be, in my opinion, from what it looks like, a Ty Webster, Bryce Cotton, import 3, import or marquee 4, and then Keanu Pinder at the 5.
Wow.
Are they a little bit thin when it comes to their front court? Is Alex Sarr, is he ready to produce right now? Right, there are questions about that. Is David Aquera ready to step up and be an impact guy in a playoff series? We're still we have to see that as well. But I go back to my original point. It has to work this season because outside of, I guess, the development and growth of some of their young guys and really cool, Perth talent, they don't have flexibility next season to make changes.
Let's have a look at the Brisbane Bullets. A lot of questions from Bullets fans. On our very first episode of Marketplace, Derek, you flagged Rajon Tucker as someone that the Bullets should look at. Couple of questions from Bullets fans to you, Olgun. Is there any link between Rajon and Brisbane?
From the people I've spoken to, not really. There's a slight connection there. Justin Schuller was an assistant coach at Melbourne United last season. Rajon Tucker was at United, and the second half of his season was really impressive. But from the people I speak to, the intel I have, I don't think that's a connection that we're going to make at this point.
Do you think it's a function of money, Olgun?
I don't think so. I think it's a case of Brisbane wanting to go a completely different direction. They do want an import 3. That is something that's been made clear to me, and they'll go. And I was told that they'll take their time with it. They'll go into Summer League, in the midst of that search. But from what I understand, Rajon Tucker is not on that list.
Derek, one for you. Which team has improved their roster most from last season?
Oh, this is easy. Melbourne United. They've done a fantastic job. They're stacked. I don't know how much money they're spending this year. I think they may plan on going into the East Asian League after the NBL season is over because they are dropping some coin on this roster. And it is a beautiful roster. And guarantee you, Olgun, I'm telling you right now, put your house in Sydney on it. Melbourne United are finishing in the top 2. I don't care what happens. They're finishing the top 2. There are no weak links in that roster. JLA is going to come back and give them exactly what they needed, some up-front scoring. We know how talented he is. Delhi is going to be better this time in the NBL than he was last time. I think he's really focused. He's motivated by the fact he needs to be a good performer in the NBL to ensure he gets court time and is a contributor on that Boomers roster. So I think everyone has a reason to prove something, and I think Dean Vickerman also has something to prove. They're in a perfect situation to win the championship, and the talent is there, Olgun.
And I don't disagree. The way they've retooled their roster, the amount of creation options they have, the import names that I'm hearing as far as that one remaining import spot, that the shooter they want, that some of those names are really high level. And so if everyone's able to stay healthy, which is obviously the most important thing, then they have the creation, they should have the shooting. I think they have the defensive personnel and prowess to get it done. And if you're going to trust any coach in the NBL, Dean Vickerman is toward the top of that list.
And Jack, let me do a little side note, Jack, because one thing I would like to see, more than anything else, I would love to see Melbourne United come out strong. But I want to see Shea Illy return fully healthy and without his head problems. The concussion stuff obviously is very serious, but he's such an enjoyable player to watch. The way he plays the right way. He plays hard. He's a guy who has transformed his offensive game to become a legitimate threat. And, I just hope good health for him and that United can go and really give him a good opportunity to do his thing again, because he was pretty much lost in its season last year, Olgun, and obviously them losing Barlow for a similar reason was really rough on them last year.
Yeah, very quickly, the thing that gives you some optimism with regard to Sha'ili is the fact that it wasn't necessarily just head knocks or concussions. It was a really specific ear injury or an inner ear injury. And from what I understand, United feels like they have everything intact and they have a really good understanding of what it is and how to prevent things and how to work through it. And so there is, when I was at Hoop City a few weeks ago and Sha'ili was doing sprints up and down the court, there is optimism that he'll be in a really good place come the start of the season, come the World Cup in August.
Were you his pace guy for the sprints, Olgun?
How dare you? How absolutely dare you?
You two were getting along so well until then as well. Olgun, I'm going to divert away from that question. You are very athletic, by the way. Derek, one for you. We've kind of combined a lot of questions from all different fan groups, but one from the Cairns Taipans, just on the players leaving and where they're placed for this season. There seems to be a little bit of uncertainty with Far North Queensland fans about their team for next season. What's your read on it?
Well, firstly, let's just go back to Olgun's last comment there. Very informative, Olgun. That's why we do the marketplace, because I didn't even know that stuff about the contract review panel. Great research. Okay, on to the Taipans. They've lost a lot of talent. Majuk Dang is out. Ben Ayer is out. I believe those two guys were not wanted by the team, so they're looking for new places. Ben Ayer's got a home, but Majuk Dang is still out there. Perhaps you can fill us in on him, Olgun. They lost two of their imports. DJ Hogue obviously signed with Sydney, and Shannon Scott is here in Brisbane. So in some sense, they've almost become a little bit of a farm team for especially Brisbane over the years. And I don't think there's too much dismay to be had by the Cairns Taipans fans, because they've done a good job in replenishing their inventory over the years. Adam Ford and before him, the coaches did a really good job of going over to America, finding quality imports, coming up with local Aussies out of college. And I believe that's what Adam Ford feels like he has done this year. Olgun and I were with him up here at Brisbane at the Under-18 Nationals, and 40 was in a pretty good place where he felt his team was going. And you know what? The way they play, Olgun, and where they play, they're always going to be tough to beat as long as they've got decent talent. And I've got confidence in Ford and what they do up there. So I'm not worried about the Taipans, and neither should be their fans.
So there are two things on that. Firstly, I think 40 was in a good mood during Under-18s because I think they'd just or very recently agreed to terms with Tyran Armstrong at that point. And so I'm sure it was all happy days within the Cairns Taipans camp. The other thing is there's this perception out there that these players are leaving because of money or because of reasons like that. Shannon Scott wanted to go back to the Taipans, but he would have had to play second fiddle effectively to Tyran Armstrong. He didn't want to do that. The Brisbane Bullets had a starting point guard spot for him, so he went there. So that was more of a positional thing. It was more of a rotation thing. That wasn't a money thing. I'm also told that the DJ Hogue signing in Sydney also wasn't a money issue. I'm told that the Taipans offer was really competitive. It wasn't a money issue that kept DJ Hogue from returning to Cairns. It was the fact that they just signed Tyran Armstrong. They have a really young group. There's a good chance they're going to start Sam Menenga as well. And so if you're DJ Hogue, what's the best chance of you getting to the NBA? Is it going back to the Cairns Taipans and playing with this really young group? Or is it going to a Sydney Kings team that will more than likely put together a roster that will compete for a title, has demonstrated they can put guys in the NBA? There is this perception that Cairns is sort of just recruiting these guys and other teams are stealing them is slightly off. They're not stealing them. It's just other better opportunities, money aside, are opening up for these guys. And Cairns has just decided this season to go in a different direction.
And that's been Kansas' identity for a while, though, Olgun. They've brought guys back. They brought Mitch Young. They brought in Mitch McCarron. It goes back to the Fernie era. That's what they have to do as a community-based team to get things done. And that's the identity. And that identity, I believe, helps them outperform what they have on paper. And, every 2 or 3 years, these Taipans pop up as a threat. And Ford now, I think he has a really good feel for the league and what he wants from his team. I'm telling you, they're gonna be a threat again.
And you make a good point that, Derek, it's every 2 or 3 years, right? The Taipans are a team that necessarily have to run in cycles, right? And so with this, I'm looking, Tyran Armstrong's a 2-year deal. Sam Menenga's a 2-year deal.
Yep.
These are guys who, in the next, maybe this season, maybe not, are not going to produce at the level that maybe you want them to. But next year, in their second season in the league, they might go and do something. And so,
right.
The thing I heard consistently from coaches around the league last season was that we just couldn't figure out the way that Taipans played. They played a really funky style of basketball. They defended really, really well, and we just couldn't figure it out. They also nailed their imports, and Keanu Pinta had an MVP season. But that was the sense from coaches around the league, and there's a chance it'll be similar to that again. Adam Ford did a really good job with that team, especially defensively. But like you said, I think they work in cycles, and with this really young group, it wouldn't surprise me if next year is the sort of apex, or getting closer to the apex of that next cycle.
Question on behalf of Adelaide 36ers fans. I think this is fair to say, Olgun. Will we see Jacob Wiley in the NBL again? We have seen him once before, and certainly in South Australian basketball media, his name has been mentioned frequently in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance we see him in the NBL again, Jack. He was someone who was being shopped around toward the end of last season when he parted ways with his team in Japan, I believe. And that was the case going into this free agency as well. He was shopped to a bunch of teams, but the Adelaide 36ers are a team that are really keen on him, and it wouldn't surprise me if those talks progress really, really quickly, and he ends up back there. He was really solid there in his first season. I think he fits really well there. You can imagine a defensive identity that you can have with potential starting lineup that has Antonius Cleveland, Jacob Wiley, and Isaac Humphries, right? That's a really, really solid front court to have, and so it wouldn't. Those talks are happening, and it wouldn't surprise me if something gets done.
Hey, Olgun, reverting back to the topic about what team I think has built the best roster in the offseason, certainly you'd have to have Adelaide in the top 3 as well. I really like what they've done, but I also like. I know we mentioned the Hawks earlier. They've done a sneaky good job for what they're trying to do. I don't mind some of the pieces they put together either. If they can get the Blanchfield deal done, then it's all good. I don't mind. I like what they've done probably over the Bullets thus far. And I don't know, like New Zealand, I think they're going to be good. But have they made any great moves in your belief, Olgun?
New Zealand's been relatively quiet. They've done a good job retaining guys.
Yeah.
It's retaining Will McDowell-White, Tom Abercrombie, these sorts of guys. But outside of that, they've been relatively quiet. And their big thing will be whether they can retain their imports. But I agree with you on the Illawarra Hawks. The way they have shored up their bench, where I think they can go a legitimate 10, 11, 12 deep even. I think Mason Peeling is a huge addition there. I think retaining guys like Dan Greeder, bringing in AJ Johnson to be sort of like a backup wing sort of guy. And I think Todd Blanchfield, it'll be official at some point. I think he's ready for a resurgent sort of season. I think that his style of play, his shooting, his spot-up shooting especially, really helps with the makeup of this team.
And one that we shouldn't forget, Ruck, let's not forget Justin Robinson. We only saw him in the first half of the opening game of the season, and then that was it. This is a guy with NBA credentials.
No, that's very true. And I've been working with young Bawali Bales up here during his time in Brisbane. He's been thrown a lifeline as a DP, and I think he's quite hungry to try and make an impression down there as well. So I think they'll have a lot of guys, Olgun, who are hungry, and the coach as well. The coach needs to prove that he can function on his own 2 feet and not always be in the shadow of Brian Gorgon.
Yeah, the Bales one is interesting to me because he signed as a DP. I'm told that the Hawks they're gauging their options right now. There are some Asian players that they're looking at. Carl Adnam is someone that's still out there, and they may be able to swing at him at some point. But if none of that eventuates, then there is a chance that Bales could just get elevated to the playing roster, and that is really important when it comes to the cap situation, because then you have Davo Hickey and Bawali Bales, both Indigenous players, who would both be nothing on the cap, and so you're effectively saving, we'll call it 2 minimum contracts worth of money. That's
wow.
roughly $150,000. That's money that you can spend on that import for.
Let's keep it moving. Question for you, Derek. What has been the most surprising signing of the free agency period so far?
This is a really tough question, and I thought this one over and over, and I think I'm going to go with. I was surprised that Tyran Armstrong went up north to Cairns, and I obviously and I don't have the intel that Olgun does, so it was really surprising when it first hit. I just envisioned him being somewhere down south. But again, this thing is about relationships. And I guess 40 has, worked the relationship. I don't know how far it goes back, Olgun. But, I think that sign, that really struck me as surprising. Not because I don't think he's any good or anything like that. I was just shocked at the location that it came out of nowhere. And I think it's probably a really good opportunity for him, especially with kind of giving him the keys. Is that kind of the intent up there, Olgun?
Well, you got to look at who's actually demonstrated certain things, and we speak about it ad nauseum on this show. Adam Ford, and his ability to develop players, the growth that guys go through under him, and when we saw the way the Taipans played, all of that plays a factor in this. If I'm Tyran Armstrong, I'm thinking, where am I going to go and where am I going to develop the most, and which style of play am I going to excel under, and sort of I think Cairns ticks both of those boxes. When it comes to, if I may answer the question, Jack, the signing that surprised me most, for me, was Wiley returning to Cairns, right? Now, they put a really big number in front of him, right? And so there was a financial incentive to go there. But there were big numbers and multi-year deals on the table elsewhere in bigger markets, in teams where that they can go put a really elite point guard next to you. And so it surprised me that he opted to practically bet on himself, take that 1 year deal to return to Cairns, as opposed to a multi-year deal somewhere else where maybe he can solidify himself as one of the elite 3-and-D guys, maybe turn into a marquee level player. It surprised me that he sort of bet on himself and he's basically that rental again over in Cairns.
And Olgun, I agree with you. And one of the things that was surprising was the quickness with which he signed. It's almost like I thought he would have kind of canvassed the market a little bit more, but he signed pretty quickly. From a commerce point of view, I agree. It may not have been the best move, but from a basketball perspective, Olgun, I think it's good for him to go back there one more year and kind of just get himself a little bit tighter with his game. He's still got some holes in there that showed up in the playoffs. And I think, one more year under 40 or two, whatever he elects, I think this next contract stint to remain in Cairns is probably a good one for his career arc.
So then, Derek, question for you. So he has returned to the Cairns Taipans. I'm told the number's pretty big, but we saw toward the end of last season him, Wiley put the ball on the floor a little bit more. His game expanded to being more than just a guy who spots up in the corner and then is the best point of attack defender on your team. His game expanded to the point where you can maybe see him as a potential marquee. Do you think with slight improvements this season that he can go into Cairns, have a really good season, and be a marquee level guy? Because right now he's sort of just below that.
Oh, no doubt in my mind. I mean, the first time I walked up to the guy and introduced myself to him, and also a very pleasant kid, really polite, really courteous, plays hard, great physique. This is a guy who Brian Gorgian would love to have. It's just that prototypical athletic defensive dog, and he can shoot the ball. I think he's going to be the best two guard in the NBL within 3 years. Best two guard, two-way player, Olgun, within 3 years. That's my prediction for him. I just believe in the kid, and he just looks like he wants it. When you walk up on him, you can feel the hunger and the aura about him. And also, when you're allowed to play defense and get away with 8 fouls a game, it definitely helps how good you are.
Olgun, question for you, away from the 8 fouls a game. Are minutes guarantees ever part of contracts?
So, not part of contracts. Getting something in black and white is, I don't think that's a thing. Are there players promised starting spots? Yes, that does happen. That has happened this offseason, more than once. Again, it's never something that's written down.
I don't mean to put you on the hot spot. You want to drop a name? Because I'm curious and I don't know what.
I'll drop a name. I'll drop a name when this is over.
Communicate with you. I can't get any intel.
Yeah, I'll drop a name to you once this recording's over. But that is something that does happen. It's happened in the past. It happens every season. They're not written in stone. They're not in contracts. And sometimes they're sort of hidden. Maybe a guy might play 1 or 2 games to start the season off the bench, and then miraculously he'll start the rest of the season. These are things that are agreed on between players and teams and coaches prior to the season. Sometimes I'll say it is rare. It is not something that happens a lot, because as a coach, you don't want to give up that level of sort of autonomy, right, to a promise. You don't want to do that, but it does happen.
I think it's one of the worst things that a coach or a GM or an organization can do is promise a starting spot to someone. Like, you're just bringing so much potential harm to your franchise by doing that. All you can say in best faith is that if you handle your business and come in here and perform like you know you can and I know you can, the starting spot should be yours. But to make a promise, a guarantee, man, you're opening up a can of worms that you may not want to delve into later.
The flip side of that, Ruck, is if you're a young player, let's say you're coming out of college, and you have a team saying, we're going to give you a starting spot, play you 25 plus minutes a game, versus another team that says, we're going to pay you $30,000 more, which one are you taking? You might take that first option because it's probably the best thing for your longevity and for your development and growth. The argument for it would be it's just currency, basically. And if you're choosing that currency over actual dollars, then I guess that's someone's prerogative. But I agree with you that there is a mental part of it that is probably not ideal when it comes to the coach and the player.
That's a great topic, though, and I'd love to talk that out and hash that out in a longer form another time, though. Money or minutes?
It's a very, very interesting debate. I want to come back to that at some point in the near future for sure. Ruck, Sydney Kings are without a coach at the moment. Should they be looking at an Australian option, or will they go an American option once more?
Well, I think since they parted ways with our beloved colleague Andrew Gaze, they've definitely gone the American route, right? They had Adam Ford in there for a minute, but since then, when they've gone out and hired coaches, they've kind of gone for big names with Chase Buford, and I can't see why they're going to be any different this time. They're getting very EuroLeague-like with their deal. They're going out and getting the players and then bringing in a professional coach to go handle it. And look, it's going to be tough to find a better coach or a better match than they got out of Chase Buford. 2 for 2. Olgun, I'm not sure I want to follow up on that, man. You'd have to pay me a lot of money to come in behind there because, you're set up to disappoint.
You know what? The thing that I keep hearing is that the level of engagement of high-level coaches around the world, in the NBA and otherwise, with the Kings is really significant. As in, really, really high-level guys are reaching out to the Sydney Kings, inquiring about the position. And so that is the extent to which that position is coveted, just in world basketball in general.
Yeah.
And it's also a look at, Will Weaver, who was in that position, went on to an assistant coach job with the Rockets. I think there's a good chance that Chase Buford goes from that position to an assistant coach job in the NBA as well. And so you look at that job as the ideal pathway to a really, really good position in the NBA. When it comes to Australian versus US, my feel, and this isn't reporting, it's just sort of my gauge of the team and the situation, is that they're going to go with what works. And that is a Will Weaver type, a Chase Buford type, a younger up-and-coming coach who's demonstrated some level of success, who has a progressive mindset when it comes to the coaching style. That feels like the direction they're going to continue to go in, because it's something that's worked. And I don't know if you're building a team and hiring a coach, why would you go away from that? I'm told that they have interviewed both Americans and Australians, and as in internationals and Australians, I'll say. But as far as the Australians who fit that mold, that Weaver-Buford mold, there are only a few of them out there, and I don't see any of them leaving the NBA anytime soon.
Couple to finish. Olgun, DeMarcus Cousins to Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Any chance?
No.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I get it. DeMarcus Cousins playing with Mitch Creek right now, Puerto Rico, cool. They have Alan Williams. He demonstrated to be a really, really high-level center in the NBL. They re-upped him for 2 seasons because of that. There's no chance.
Derek, you like that even when he's angry, he's still calm? He's just got such a beautiful manner about him.
with the same happy look on his face. I can't rock him.
Just who let that question slip in there? Jack.
Yeah, I just thought
Can I jump all over this next one?
Yeah, you can. Go for it, because it is our final one.
John Wall, not a chance. Spare me. Nobody wants to see that, Olgun. Nobody wants to see John Wall playing over here.
John Wall is 32. He is, I believe, he's healthy. He is an NBA player. The Phoenix will they are doing their due diligence. I'm told there's a meeting today, but it's the due diligence. He's also a part owner of the team. The meeting could be about, hey, come play for us, or it's, hey, what are our financials going to look like next season, right? I appreciate the fact that it's out there and that I guess everything's an option. But yeah, the Kings, they're going to go after Eric Spoelstra when the finals are over. That's the sort of level that we're in right now.
But first, I would still see John Wall as being able to have an impact in a right position in the NBA, and surely he would have that mindset too. So I just couldn't see it being a mental wavelength match to come over here when perhaps in his mind he'd be like, wow, I could still be back over there, and that never works out well.
Look, he's 32. He can still perform at a decent level. Rich Paul is his agent. There is so much water. As in, John Wall is not going to commit to a deal anytime soon when the NBA season's not even over. We haven't even gone to the NBA offseason yet, let alone thinking about signing with international teams. And so, again, I appreciate that there's always interest in every player, right? I'm sure every team would be interested in John Wall, but that doesn't mean that it's likely in any way.
Okay, let's finish a little closer to home then for our last question. Daniel Johnson is a question that we've got frequently when we threw this open on Instagram. Olgun, firstly to you with an update on DJ's future. Are there any takers for him next season?
Not that I've heard of at this point. I don't see a spot for him either. The kind of word that keeps trickling around NBL circles right now is that the feel is that he'll just go play in Japan or go play in Asia somewhere, just get that sort of deal and sort of run through the rest of his career in that sort of situation. But as of now, there are no takers.
Derek, what are your thoughts? We're talking about, when the history of the league is written for the last 20 years, DJ is going to go down as one of the best local big men that we've seen in this league.
And still a very fine professional scorer. And probably, he probably wasn't the most personable guy over the years. And I think that might be coming back to bite him and outweighing his talent, which I still think he could produce in the right role, in the right situation. But part of his role would probably be some games having a very limited role and coming off the bench, maybe seeing if you're hot and maybe only getting 5 minutes in a game. Maybe another game you're playing 20 minutes. We need you to mentor on a daily basis some of our young and up-and-coming guys, But does DJ fit that profile as a player right now? Is he willing to relent some of his minutes for the betterment of the team or perhaps his career longevity? So maybe it is go over to Japan where he can perhaps get a role that he thinks he can still play and go from there. But it would kind of be a shame not to see him go out on his own terms in Adelaide, but this is the way it is. It's professional sport.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Jack. This is something that I think as NBL fans, everyone is going to have to sort of get used to. There are names that were in the NBL last season who we would consider really popular players who are not going to be in the NBL this season. And that's for a lot of different reasons. Guys get aged out, new players enter the league. You think of just the new players who have entered the league recently. You look at Tyran Armstrong, Flynn Cameron, Owen Foxwell's gone from DP to roster, Isaac White's gone from DP to roster. And so these spots are getting filled up by younger guys, and that's the direction a lot of teams are going in. And that just means that these veteran guys might not have those opportunities anymore.
Well said.
As always, you two are in fantastic form. Little lovers tiff in the middle there, but we made up and we got to the end, which is fantastic. Olgun, you've dominated this free agency period via espn.com.au and your own Twitter feed as well. So keep up the good work and we'll catch you next time on the Marketplace.
Thank you. We should absolutely do this again.
Well, my word, we will. You can lock this one in. And Ruck, always great to see you. Your analysis is spot on. So thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks, Olgun. Great to do this with you guys again.
And a big thanks to all of you fans. All of your questions were absolutely superb. We could have gone for another half an hour with the amount of questions that we will have received. Trust me, we will do this again soon. In the meantime, you can stay up to date with all of the latest news, analysis and opinion during the NBL free agency period at nbl.com.au, all of our social platforms. And until next time, thanks for watching The Marketplace.